Greetings, Greg here again. Another video showing you how to transform businesses and how to perhaps transform your own life and get more freedom and abundance in it through technology and through creative entrepreneurship. So in this video, I'm going to take a look at what I still think is one of the most amazing things, ChatGPT. This time combined with some Odoo uses. And one I think is really fun is that it's able to not just understand Odoo itself, but it also knows how to build code in Odoo and create custom things in Odoo in some very different ways. So I'm going to give an example here of how we can use it to actually store data and things for things that are not typically in Odoo, and then how we can use ChatGPT is very smart about how it can understand the way Odoo does things. So let's start by telling ChatGPT that we want to use Odoo to store data for a Monopoly game. I'm making a Monopoly game, type game, and I want to use Odoo to store the data and content for my game. And then I'll say, so I need to create custom models in Odoo for player, let's see what else, player, board, property, and so on. And I'll hit enter, and that's going to probably give ChatGPT what it needs now to come up with a result here. Now, one of the sad things that I'm coming to the conclusion of is that ChatGPT is having some growing pains, and it looks like it appears that I might be experiencing that now. Oh, here it goes. It's just, I think, under a lot of load right now. So essentially it's confirming what I want to do, but I didn't really tell it to give me anything. I say I need to create custom models. Say, please give me a list of custom Odoo models I may need for a Monopoly game. In Odoo. So I'm asking it now to actually give me what are some of these models for a Monopoly game. And we'll see what it comes up with here. All right, so ChatGPT is running a little bit slow, but you can see, look what it did here is it generated a list of the types of models and things that I'm going to need to create for a Monopoly kind of game, the types of data. So now let's go a little bit further here and say, say for the player, let's ask someone, please help me create a player model for the Monopoly game in Odoo. What fields would you recommend being added to the model? So I'm getting really specific here about the player model and see what it knows from what it knows about Monopoly games and how they're constructed, if it can give me the player model for this particular game. And you'll see what's remarkable here is that it didn't just list the fields, but it actually gave us the exact code that we're going to need to create this model inside of Odoo. And we'll just look at the code real quickly here. Notice how it created the class player, inheriting from models model, gives it the name monopoly.player, so it knows the name of the game is going to be Monopoly, the name of the player, the current balance, and notice how it defaults it to 1,500, so it knows from the Monopoly game that's the starting price. And notice here, properties equals a one-to-many to monopoly.property, to give a list of all the properties the player owns. So it actually created this related field for us. We have if they're in jail or not and how long they've been in jail. because they can only be in there 3 turns and they get out automatically, so that's an integer. It has whether they're in jail or not as a flag, and it has a get out of jail free card as a flag. So pretty amazing. It pretty much gave us exactly what we need. So say, please create the script for the property model. And so now it should give us the script right back now for that. And here it is. It gave us all of this information back, and you see it's got everything we need in it: the cost, the rent, who the owner is, and here's that link back to Monopoly Player for the properties, who owns the property, whether it's mortgaged or not, houses, how many, hotels, how many, and even notice that it has the color selection for it too, to keep the color of the property as well, for the groupings of them, the group of them. So pretty impressive right here. And it's still writing out some of this code or the description. So not only does it give you code for it, but then it even comes down here and gives you why each of these fields are here. So I think over and all a pretty impressive display for creating that. So we have that. I think that we need a method for having turns and rolling dice. So we need a method. Okay, how about we say, first of all, please create the game model for I'll just say please create the game model. So it's going to know, I mean, like the game manager, and so this should have like a list of the players for us. It should give us like what turn we're on, whose turn it is, that kind of thing. I think we'll see what it does, if it knows what I'm talking about. Okay, so I got an error here that said the model is currently overloaded request. You can try request or contact us through support. So I'm honestly having a frustrating time using it. ChatGPT in general, it's been very, very, very slow. Even though I've gotten good results, it's been sluggish. It's obviously getting a lot of demand. I tried to just get a little more descriptive with it here, so maybe it has to think a little less, because all this stuff has to go through a pretty complex logarithms to determine what the context is and what you've said in order to come up with the results. Okay, so it actually did it. The second request I had, where I said please create the Odoo model I need for the game manager, I think before it just is overloaded. It really took it a long time, and you can see it's still typing here, and it's really slow, and I think it is because it's literally thinking this out. When you think about what's required for this artificial intelligence to take the concept of a game of Monopoly, for example, that, you know, it has been written in a variety of languages, but certainly no one has ever written it in Odoo, and it's able to take the concepts from the Monopoly game and all of the structure of it and apply it, and then actually create, using Odoo's programming framework, the result. And what's pretty remarkable, I think, about this as an Odoo developer, and I have sold thousands of Odoo courses, worked with lots of partners. I've been with Odoo since the very beginning, and even now, as big as Odoo is, it's not like Odoo is as popular as, say, something like an Etsy or Facebook or Amazon or a technology such as Python itself. So you could understand it being able to write Python code, but this is very specific for the Odoo framework, and I think that makes this, it even shows how even more remarkable this tool is at taking what you say and what you ask it for, abstract concepts, in a sense like a Monopoly game that really is not anything to do with Odoo itself and its models. So what I think is also interesting is it kind of created a state system here. So now let's try and see if it can write us a method for managing the turns. And you please, and I say please, write me a method, the methods for turns in the game and rolling the dice. So now let's see if it can, now that we got the game manager, I kind of intentionally made the game manager first so that now hopefully it's going to be able to use what I've told it here to actually write me methods in Python that use this model to manage the turn in the game. And then it even says, sure, here's an example how you can implement take turn and roll dice in your Monopoly game manager. And I think it's interesting to see that you can tell that every time it's doing this, it's doing some additional processing, and it kind of manages things. Because notice how there's no comment here that says these are the fields we need. It just shows the fields. And then down here it started writing them out, I think, before it either timed out. And I think here we're just having some, I believe we really are just having some issues of performance. Okay, so to be honest, I think the biggest barrier right now for ChatGPT really is scalability of the tool itself and being able to handle the load and how much people are wanting to use it, because it really is sluggish and I'm struggling to get it to respond. So I've cut out some of that, but what I'm going to do is try to get it to do a little bit more at a time and just in general see if we can't get some good responses. So I said, write me a next turn method for taking turns in the game and rolling the dice and moving the player on the board. And then so this gives it a lot more information. It'll hopefully think about it, and if it doesn't work this time, I will just pause this video and wait and come back and try it in a couple hours or something. Okay, a little bit of patience. It wasn't that long. I just had to wait maybe 30 seconds. But check this out. It says here's how you can implement the next turn method. It rebuilt this. Notice now it has a board to another model. So we have a reference to board because we're moving around the board. We also have this round. I don't even know what that's for yet. But here's our next turn method. Check it out. So it even has the self.ensure one, which makes sure that this, is only one record that this is on when it processes it. Instead of like a group of records it would have to loop through. But what's interesting about that is that's very Odoo specific and Odoo intrinsic, and it put that in there is like just brilliant. And it also checks the state. So if we're not in progress, it just gets out of the next turn. So there's a state check there. Rolls the dice. I like that it put this in another method. Moves the player on the board. Then it updates the current player. So notice how it goes to the next player and sets the current player. So it actually wraps around the players the turn. So pretty brilliant. Then here's how it rolls the dice and returns back the value from the rolled dice. And then it writes all this out about it. I think it's pretty brilliant. So now I'm going to show you another test I did when I ran this. It just blows my mind. I wrote in here, please give me a list of models I may need in Odoo to create a Monopoly game. So this was the request I gave. Now notice the result I got back. It says player. To store information about the players, such as name, avatar, money, properties, you can inherit from the res.partner model provided by Odoo. Notice here, too, under property, you can inherit from the product template model provided by Odoo. So to me, this is just crazy in the sense of how the AI is, in some ways it's unpredictable. Like when I asked it again in a different way and I didn't ask it quite the same, it never caught that you could inherit from res.partner instead of creating player just by itself. And I actually did this one before I did the other one. I just ran into too many glitches with basically ChatGPT getting too hammered by people using it too much, and I should have just paused it and waited rather than deleting my older video, because this was what it gave me the first time. And I just wanted to point that out, that it caught this when I asked it in a different way, but how brilliant it is at the same time to know that it says you can inherit. And then this is where it erred when I said, please generate the Python model code for the player model. It hung up on me, and I had to kind of restart everything. But this is what it gave me at first. And so I was really impressed by this. So going back to this one that we're working on, what that wants me to do here is asking it if it can refactor the model to inherit. Is it possible to refactor property to inherit from product.template? We'll see if it understands that, and then takes that question and from that rewrites our product template to use our monopoly.property model to use product template as the base model, and then just add additional fields. And sure enough, there it goes. And so now it rewrote the property class. I'm going to stop it actually from, well, I won't, but one of the tricks I think is you can stop it from generating, and then when it sends back less text, you're less likely to run up against your cost of tokens, because here pretty soon I'll have to quit just because I'll have overused my OpenAI ChatGPT. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that just to take a little load off of it. But notice here that now we don't have to have name in here or image or the price or any of that other kinds of things, because it's inheriting that from product template, and then it's adding these. So I'm kind of using what it told me before when I asked it, and I knew that it had already offered that previously, but then when I restarted the video, it never offered the inheritance like in any of that earlier stuff. And I thought it'd be good to just go back and show you that in an earlier video it actually had suggested the inheritance, which I thought was just practically magical. And even what it's doing here to understand the different categories of the fields, it's like it feels like it really understands Monopoly, it feels like it really understands Odoo, and then it's really able to synthesize and recreate and write this code for us that even as a developer myself, I've written a lot of code. This can really save me time, especially if the performance of ChatGPT gets better and it doesn't time out as much, and longer responses, so that, because there are limits to the length of the response. So one trick about this is you have to kind of give it pieces at a time to build and not overwhelm it with trying to build the whole thing at once. And I think at some point that's going to change, that I think it's going to literally be able to build all these models and put together the code and the template and the boilerplate code. So let's see if it can do a little bit more with the code. Say I need a method to buy and sell properties. I need a method for players to buy a property if they land on it and it is available to buy and they have the money to buy it. So I'm just telling it I need a method. I don't really know what model it would go in. I mean, I know I would figure that out, which model I would put it in myself as an experienced developer, but I haven't given it any thought. And one of the things about this is I'm not having to give it any thought. It's like I can suggest to ChatGPT to do things for me, and if it does it, it can save me and it returns me a result that I can agree with. Then I'm on my way. So it kind of saves me a lot of mental energy that would be spent to do what this is doing right here. So it looks like it's putting it in the player class, and it's rewriting those fields for me. And I might be able to tell it, you don't need to rewrite the fields, you can just give me the method, but it wants to make sure that you got the whole code basically that you need. But sure enough, here's our by property method, and so well, you notice that it's doing some of these things that are important and putting the checks in. The current property, notice it finds it on the board and actually has a way get property at method in the board. So that method has never been written yet. And that's what I think that is also fascinating about this is, for example, the current property, it has to know where it's at, and it knows how to go, because we're in the player class, to the board and find the property at the location that the player is currently in, and then check to see if that property is already owned, and so it checks if there's an owner of that property. So you can see it's digging into the property here of the model. Check to see if it's got enough money or not, then assign out everything, remove the price here from the balance of the player. So this is where they actually spend the money, and then notice it adds the property to the list of properties for the player. So now this list now will have the player's property in it. Totally mind-blowing to me that this AI is this powerful, that I don't see anything wrong with this code. It's clean, it does what it needs to do. Obviously it needs to be wired into other things. I haven't tested it on the view side, but maybe if I get 1,000 views on this in the next 30 days or something like that, I will take the time to do that and maybe do some views and things as well. Right now I'm just experimenting with this side of it. And so let's see here that we have this get property at method. Please write me the code for the get property at method in the board model. So the truly mind-blowing thing about ChatGPT is its ability to take conversational requests that are actually very sometimes specific and technical in nature about how you want things to fit together in your games or in your business or whatever you're building. Because I'm just using this Monopoly idea because it's like completely abstracted out from what Odoo really is. As there is no Monopoly app in Odoo. There is inventory, there is purchasing, there is sales. There's all those concepts of those models, and why I'm using this Monopoly example is to show how ChatGPT is able to synthesize the specifics of a Monopoly game. So now let's look at this. The get property at, it sends the location in, and look at this here, how it uses the exact syntax we need of finding the environment of the property. It does a search through the properties models to find the location of the property that's passed in, and the board, and then it returns true. Returns it back right here. So it finds the property based upon where they're at on the board, returns it back. Now, where is the property model? Location, owner. Okay, so there's something that's missing here. So we're missing some things. So the property, how does it know the difference between the electric company and the railroads? Let's talk about the railroads. We need fields in the property model for the railroads. Or is that in the board? what's the board? Have we generated the board? I don't think we've generated the board model. Let's generate the board model. Please write the code for the board model. All right, so I feel like we're missing some things because we don't have a way to tell what's a railroad. We need fields for property types such as railroad and community chest. So and jail. So let's see what it says to something like that. How do we do that? Let's see if we can figure that out for us so we don't have to think about it. Because right now the properties are just, or maybe we need to do the property, look at the property class a little closer, because that probably would go in the property class. Okay, so here we go. It's telling us and writing us out there specifically, and then going to give us the code for it. Now it is kind of, property, great. So it is kind of cool that it knows property as a type. Jail. Now it kind of missed the electric company and the chance. So that's a kind of if I mention those, is it going to know how to put them in? So I just said we have types for Chance, Electric Company, and Waterworks. And so if you didn't have the context of Monopoly, that we're working on the properties and just what we talked about and everything, it would like make people, it would be like, what? And now the question is, will it rewrite this and give it and properly fix the code with just this little snippet? And here it goes. Yep, it did just what I thought it would do. And so, yeah, wow, there it did it. So now we have all the other types. And I assume we could tediously have it write the code for us probably as well. But I'm going to try something even a little more crazy. I'm going to say, create a method to populate property with a list of all the Monopoly properties and their prices. And so if it can do this, that's like a big time saver, just even of like maybe hand coding that out or figuring out a way to load that into a CSV file or something like that. But we'll see if it can do it. Okay, so like, wow, right? Here it is. It's creating the properties data here for us. In a list, and you can see it's even including the locations. Notice how it's skipping, and it knows where they're at on the freaking board, so that it's skipping the ones because I said properties, and instead, so it's skipping the others, but it's got the prices in there too, and it's using the real Monopoly prices. So it's pretty crazy, I think. And notice the property type. So I'm just really quickly to see if we can get it to generate a method for populating the other types. Create a method to populate the properties types, including chance, community chest, jail, etc. for the board. So we're just telling it we're greedy, like don't do just the populate properties with just the properties. Do it with all of the property types, including chance, jest, jail, etc. See, like, hopefully it then picks that up and does the others. Now, one thing I might even try to tell it is we don't need to see the rest. We just need the method, not the rest of the model. And maybe it'll, in its response, limit what it returns back and give us a little bit better chance of getting more results we need, rather than repeating all this, because this keeps getting repeated over and over again. Okay, you can see that it's still missing and skipping over the other data, and maybe it's not, maybe it is, or maybe it would put it if I waited, but I'm going to try to get it to do it in order by saying we need to create the data to populate all locations on the board. And by saying locations, it hopefully will go sequentially through this, write a method to create all the locations on the Monopoly board. And I am not mentioning property in there. I'll say all property locations on the board. We write a method to create all the locations. And so I'm trying to get ChatGPT to be a little bit more specific. See, it says now it moved it to the board there instead of having it in the property, which I think would make a little more sense. And it already knew about location, and it already knew about, oh, and there's Go, and there's Mediterranean, and there you go. So those are there's the data getting created, but we also need the price as well, and we also need to make, I don't know, do we? Oh, there it is, where it ties to the property ID. So it has actually the data in there to tie the locations to the property ID, and it's literally created not just the models for our data, but it's capable of giving us the format for how to create the data itself and relate it. I think this is brilliant. Of now the properties are literally going to have the price and everything and store all of its stuff, and the locations on the board are all managed like right here with this Monopoly location. So I can say, if it's trivial to write it, but we don't even have to generate the location model, and it'll and I'm saying generate, sometimes I'm saying write, sometimes I've said give me the code, sometimes it knows what you're talking about every time. And here it's showing us the location model and building it, and I think it's just so amazing to me that now the location type all makes sense. We didn't need to really have a property type. Like, I pushed the ChatGPT kind of down a road that it didn't need to go on. It actually understood a bit better how this was fitting together than I did. I didn't give it enough time. So one of the tips, I'm going to leave you with a tip at the end here, like a big tip, is have it build all the models out first. In other words, when it says here's a list of the models, systematically go through that list and tell it to build them all, because that'll create all those relationships. And it seems like it really does help it have context for what you're building on and what you're working through. But notice here how this ties everything together, as we have the location now, the types of locations, and everything that we need to manage that. So now let's do one more final code snippet that it doesn't really do. We need code to charge players rent when they land on a property someone owns, and calculate houses and hotel costs in there as well. So now see, this is an example of something, if I was to sit down and write this, it's pretty trivial, but it also takes time. Like some of the trivial thing takes time. And this thing within just literally seconds is giving me the code for a charge rent. And this charge rent isn't necessarily simple. It looks like it knows in some of this, I don't know, I don't think we need to keep seeing the property types over and over again and all that kind of stuff. I think actually that property type was a mistake, actually, a little bit. I think that was more of a location, and then the location has the type in it. But as long as this works and we get this code, this is what this is about. And here it is. Look at that. There's the prices, and it's actually doing the houses, how many houses it has, as like a else ifs. And then I assume it would do the hotels as well. What we can do is say finish the charge rent method, and it'll know what we mean by that. It's like, and it'll start right there. Isn't that cool? So it knows it doesn't have enough time to give you everything back at once. It times it out, but you can tell it to just keep going, like give us the rest of it. Look at the railroad. Rent equals times 2 times how many you own and the count of how many you own. And it's figuring in, and the utility as well. I added some new conditions for property types for houses, hotels, as well as utility. The location method count they added to the board as well. So I'm telling you what is just, it blows my mind away that it's writing this code right here. Look at this method it wrote for the utility. The dice roll, because remember that's part of the calculation, utility times 2 to the power. I'm telling you, isn't that two multiplication is, and then the location count of the owner minus 1, and then here's where it pays the player and actually charges them the rent to pay them. How about that? AI, the power of. So that should be a really simple method, the pay player method. Write the pay player method. You don't need to give me the rest of the model. Just the method is enough. So let's see if I say that to it, if it just gives me back the method. Nope. Ignored my request to give me just the method, but you can't have everything. A little disappointing, but so you have to sit through it, and you can see there's like kind of, that's probably one of the things that'll get fixed over really quickly, I imagine, given how powerful this is. So there's where it pays the player, where it takes and away from the person paying and adds to the receiver. So you pass it, the receiver, into the pay player. How about when the payer can't pay, they should go bankrupt and be eliminated from the game? Can you write the code for that? So this is the kind of stuff that just is mind-blowing to me, especially in the context of like, why can't you just give me back the method? But it's going to now rewrite this, and hopefully will give a lot of code that you'd have to think out and do. Truly an amazing piece of technology. And we'll see here how it changes this code. Go bankrupt if they don't have the money. See? Otherwise, it takes their money away. And notice how it removes them from the players. and then say, please add a method so that when only one player is left, they win and the game ends. So in a sense, that almost kind of creates the whole entire kind of framework for the data, managing the data that would go in it, creating the data in it. I wonder, we kind of need a model for the tokens as well. So let's just, final little bonus, we'll do the tokens. There's the remaining players, actually using a lambda, and have a game state with a winner, game over. You could probably tell it to save the high score in a leaderboard, and it would literally create that code for us just in a matter of a minute or two. And that's what's crazy about it, getting it this far. So hopefully you will like and subscribe. Hopefully a chance for you to see how, in a lot of ways, this is life-changing for everybody involved. If you're a programmer or developer, being able to use a tool like this in the hands of someone that knows how to code and knows how to build software is going to be immensely more powerful than someone who doesn't know how to code. So looking at this, people might go, oh, now you don't need to be a programmer. Not true. It's like having a calculator in the hands of someone that doesn't understand math. So if you want to be great at math, people think, oh, you have a calculator, you don't need to know math anymore. It's just simply not true. And for some ways, this tool is a little bit like that, where if you don't understand design and architecture and how code fits together and models and all the concepts, you can't use a tool like this. So if you want to join me in my master classes, and go to odooinnercircle.com if you want more business enterprise side. Otherwise, you can go to like First Class Game Studios and look at some of my game courses, or just reach out to me if you'd like to work with me. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys can see how amazing this technology is, how we can use it in our lives.